My daughter Jessica bought her cat a fancy bed that cost $250. I got socks for my birthday. Then she told me to forget about my beach trip because she needed me to watch her twins and her cat. Don't make trouble, she said. Your plans don't matter as much as mine. So I walked away. They thought I'd come crawling back by dinner. They never imagined I would book a fancy cruise, call a lawyer, and find out the huge lie that had been hidden for 38 years. Welcome, friend. Stay until the end and tell me what time it is where you live. I love thinking about people from everywhere listening together right now. The chicken was burnt before anyone sat down. It was Easter dinner. I had been cooking since Friday morning and my back hurt so much I could barely stand. My daughter Jessica was holding her phone up high. The screen was so bright it hurt my eyes. This resort in Morocco is amazing, Dad. So beautiful. My fans are going to love it. My husband Robert clapped his hands together. His voice loud and proud. That's my princess, only the best. I watched them from across the table. I had been cooking meals in this kitchen for 38 years. For the past 2 years, since Jessica moved back home with her twin boys and that fancy cat named Princess, I had become like a ghost. I was just someone who cleaned and cooked. The twins were staring at their tablets. Jessica, I said softly, pointing at my grandsons who were 7 and 9, ignoring the food I made. Jessica waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. They're okay. It's Easter. Let them play. She turned back to Robert. The company is paying for everything. Business class tickets. Cleared my throat. Well, about trips, I'm excited about mine. Nobody looked at me. We went to the living room for gifts. My hands still hurt from washing all the pots. I gave Jessica her present. It was a simple picture frame from the store. Inside was a photo of her and the boys from last summer. Oh, she said. She looked at it for 1 second. Thanks, Mum. She put it down on the floor. Robert opened his. A book I thought he would like. He made a sound and tossed it on the chair. Then Jessica smiled big. Princess, your turn, sweetie. She and Robert gave the cat a shiny pink box. It was a smart bed with heating and cooling. Robert said proudly it cost $250. It tracks her sleep and keeps her perfect temperature. Jessica explained, setting it up in the corner. I need her comfortable while I'm in Morocco. My stomach felt sick. Socks for me. A $250 bed for the cat. That's wonderful, dear, I said, my voice shaking. But we need to talk about when you're leaving. Jessica was busy filming the cat for her phone. What about it? You said you're leaving next Tuesday. Yeah, it's an 11-day trip. Big work thing. Jessica, I said, trying to stay calm. My beach trip is next Tuesday. I told you about this 6 months ago. I bought the tickets. It's my trip with Linda. The room went quiet. Even the twins looked up. Jessica slowly put her phone down. Her face looked angry and confused. You're kidding, she said. No, I told you. 6 months ago, and I reminded you last week. Linda and I have plane tickets. The hotel can't give our money back. You cannot be serious right now, Mom. She stood up, her voice getting louder. Who's going to watch the twins? Who's going to watch Princess? I can't leave them with some stranger. I held the edge of the table. The wood felt sticky from spilled juice. I thought you and Robert would. They are your children. Robert hit his fist on the chair arm. Helen, what is this? You know Jessica has this important work trip. It's just the beach, Helen. Jessica's voice was mean and sharp. Just sand and water. This is my job. This is important. It's my vacation, I whispered. I'm 63 years old. I stopped working 2 years ago. I've been watching your children and your cat every single day for 2 years. And you love doing it, Robert said loudly. You're so good at it. You always have been. I am tired, Robert. You need to cancel, Mom. Jessica said it like an order. Her eyes were cold like ice. This isn't up for discussion. You're staying here. It's what you're supposed to do. We are family and families help each other. She looked at Robert, who nodded. She's right, Helen. Family helps family. Your little fun trip can wait. You don't work anymore. You have nothing but time. All the air left my body. They weren't asking me. They were telling me. My 32 years working at the post office, my savings, my plans. None of it mattered. I was just the free babysitter. I looked at the cold chicken, the dirty plates I would have to wash, the expensive cat bed, and the picture frame on the floor. Something inside me, something that had been sleeping for a very long time, woke up. I stood. I didn't say anything. Mom, what are you doing? I'm talking to you. I walked to the closet and pulled out my old blue jacket. Helen, stop being silly, Robert ordered from his chair. Where are you going? Jessica yelled. You can't just leave. We're not done talking. You better not walk out on me. I grabbed my purse and car keys. The keys jingled in my shaking hand. Open the door. The cold April air hit my face and made my eyes water. Fine, go. I heard Jessica scream from inside. You'll be back in an hour when you remember you have nowhere to go. I walked into the cold air and closed the door behind me. The rain hit the windshield hard. My hands gripped the wheel tight, and my old jacket scratched my neck. I couldn't feel my fingers. I just drove to my sister's apartment, feeling like my whole life was ending. Jessica was right about one thing. I had nowhere else to go. I parked my old Toyota in the visitor spot at Riverside Apartments. It was a small, clean building where people lived quiet lives. Robert always called it the place where people go to give up. To me, it was the only peaceful place I knew. Pressed the buzzer. My sister Karen's voice came through the speaker, clear and strong. Even at 85 years old. Who's there? It's me, Karen. It's Helen. The door clicked open right away. Karen was standing at her door before I even walked down the hall. She wore neat pants and a bright orange sweater. Her gray hair was perfectly done. She looked at my wet face and my jacket that was still open. Oh my goodness, Helen, she said, her voice calm. You look like you've been through a storm. She stepped aside. Her apartment was tiny and spotless and smelled like tea and flowers. She didn't hug me. She just pointed to her small blue couch. Sit and tell me everything. Fell onto the cushion. Everything came pouring out like water from a broken dam. The 3 days of cooking, the tablets, the $250 cat bed versus the socks. The fight, Jessica screaming about Morocco, Robert's betrayal. He told me I have nothing but time, I cried, the words hurting my throat. He said I had to stay to watch her kids and watch her cat. They just decided what I should do with my life. I waited for her to say, oh sweetie, or that's awful. Karen did neither. She went to her tiny kitchen and poured 2 cups of hot tea. She handed one to me. Her hand didn't shake. And what did you do? She asked. I didn't do anything. I just left. But that's the smartest thing you've done in 2 years. I looked up surprised. Mama, they treated me like I'm nobody. They treated you exactly how you let them treat you, Karen said. She sat in her chair, sitting up straight and tall. You were Helen, the post office supervisor. You managed 20 workers. You handled problems. You made important decisions. People respected you. The day you stopped working, you let Jessica turn you into Grandma, the free helper. She's my daughter. They're my family. A family doesn't make its 63-year-old mother into a servant who works for free. Karen's voice was sharp. A husband doesn't choose his spoiled daughter over his wife. Robert has been letting Jessica boss you around since she was a little girl. He likes it. Keeps you busy and keeps him happy. Her words hurt, but they were true. Every single one. They're treating you like a worker, Helen, she continued, her voice low and serious. But they don't even pay you. They take your time. They take your respect. And now they want to take your one small trip you planned for yourself. What am I supposed to do? Whispered. Go back. Yell at them. No, you don't yell at a boss when you quit a job. You just leave. I stared at her. I can't just leave Robert. We've been married 38 years. I was married to your father for 48 years, Karen said. Her eyes looking deep into mine. I loved him, but I spent 48 years cooking his food and doing his laundry. I waited until he was gone to finally do the things I wanted to do. I will not sit here and watch you make the same mistake. You're not just a wife. You're not just a mother. You are Helen. She leaned forward. You worked at the post office. You know how to keep records. You know how to organize things. Your retirement money. Did you put it with Robert's money or is it yours? Something cold went through me like ice water. It's mine. My own account from my 32 years at work. He can't touch it. It's separate. Well, there you go, she said, sipping her tea. You are not their property, Helen. You are not helpless. You are a woman with your own money. She stood and walked to her window, looking out at the quiet parking lot. It's Easter night. They think you'll come crawling back, say sorry, and cancel your trip. They're sitting in that house, warm and full, waiting for their helper to come home. She turned back to me, and her face got softer for just a moment. You are 63. You are not dying. It is time for you to start living. You don't need them to say it's okay. You just need to say it's okay yourself. I looked down at the hot tea. My hands were shaking, but not from being cold anymore. It was anger. A deep, quiet 38-year-old anger. I finished the tea in one drink. It was bitter and burned my throat. You're right, Karen, I said. I'm not their worker. And I quit. I slept on Karen's blue couch with my jacket still on. I didn't dream. When the sun came up on Monday morning, I didn't feel rested, but I felt something I hadn't felt in many, many years. Strong. I didn't go home. I didn't call. I used Karen's bathroom, washed my face, and walked out. I was at my bank, the one Robert didn't use, the one that got my paycheck for 32 years, before it opened at 9 o'clock in the morning. I sat across from a nice young banker named Stephen. I need to see how much money I have in my retirement account and my regular account, I said. My voice didn't shake. He typed on his computer. Clicking. Sound was the only noise. He turned the screen toward me. I looked at the number. It was a good number. It was the result of a lifetime of being careful with money. It was from every lunch I made at home, every vacation I didn't take, every time I fixed something instead of buying new. It was a big, solid, beautiful number, and it was all mine. My hands were steady. Thank you, Stephen. That's all I needed. I left the bank and walked to a coffee shop across the street. I ordered a large fancy coffee and sat at a small table. Pulled out my phone. First, I opened the airplane app. I found my trip to the beach. Pressed cancel. A message popped up saying the ticket money was gone. The best I could get was a $30 credit that expired in 6 months. Nothing. I thought of the $250 cat bed. Pressed yes, cancel. I let the $30 credit and the $180 ticket and the hotel money burn. It was the price I had to pay to be free. Then I opened the internet. I didn't look for beach hotels. I opened the Princess Cruise Line website. I had seen their commercials late at night about places I would never go. I searched for trips leaving soon. A list came up. 15-day Alaska adventure. Leaves from Seattle, Washington. Leaving date next Tuesday. Tomorrow. It was crazy. It was wild. It was scary. Clicked on it. I looked at the choices. A small room with no window or a big room with a private balcony. Thought of the socks. I clicked big room with balcony. I booked a one-way fancy plane ticket from Atlanta to Seattle. Leaving in 4 hours. I entered my credit card number, the one I kept for emergencies, and pressed confirm. The screen flashed. Thank you, Helen. Your trip is booked. The total cost made my stomach hurt. It was more than my first car, and it was worth every single penny. Only then, sitting in my car in the coffee shop parking lot, did I call the house. Robert answered on the first ring. His voice sharp and annoyed. Helen, finally. Are you done with this silly tantrum? You need to come home. The dishwasher is making a weird sound. I'm not coming home, Robert, I said. Silence. What did you say? Stop this nonsense. You need to say sorry to Jessica. I've canceled my trip to the beach. I cut him off. I heard him breathe out, relieved. That makes sense. That's my girl. Now about lunch. I booked a different trip, Robert. The line went quiet. A different trip. What? To some other boring place next month. No, I said. Looking at the email on my phone. I'm going to Alaska for 15 days. You what? His voice was getting louder, that familiar mean tone. With whose money? You are not spending our money on some with my money, I said. My retirement money. My plane to Seattle leaves in a few hours. Helen, you are not. I forbid it. You will turn that car around and come home right this second. Do you hear me? I am warning you. I pressed the red button on the screen. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. My hands were shaking, but I started the car. I drove back to Karen's apartment. My bag from Easter was still in the trunk. I was going to Alaska. The taxi pulled up exactly 10 minutes later. A gray van. The driver, a kind woman, got out and took my big suitcase. I had been standing outside, my thin jacket pulled tight. I hadn't gone back inside. As the driver put my bag in the van, the door flew open. You're not getting in that car, Helen. Robert stood there, his face red with anger. He was still in his pajamas and bathrobe. His hair was messy. He looked pathetic. Jessica was behind him filming me with her phone. Her face was red from crying, but her eyes were cold and mean. She was already making up the story for her followers. My terrible, selfish mother leaving me. Are you trying to destroy this family? Robert yelled, his voice loud enough for the driver to hear. We need you here. Your grandchildren are inside. They are your grandchildren, Robert, I said. My voice was calm. Surprised me. I've raised my child. Now it's your turn. Mom, you are being so selfish. Jessica cried, still holding the phone steady. Have a job. Brand deal. This isn't a game. You are my help. What am I supposed to do? The driver, looking uncomfortable, opened the van door for me. I guess you'll have to figure that out, I said, looking right at Jessica. You're 40 years old. It's time you learned how to be a grown-up. Or, I added, looking at Robert. You can finally ask your father to help. He's always been your biggest cheerleader. You, Jessica stuttered, her victim act cracking. You're nothing. You were just a post office worker. You're jealous of me. That's what this is. No, dear, I said, getting into the taxi. I'm just tired. Close the door. Robert ran forward and grabbed the handle, trying to pull it open. It was locked. He pounded on the window, his face right against the glass. His face was no longer just angry. It was scared. The comfortable life was falling apart. Helen, don't you dare. I'm warning you, he yelled, his spit hitting the glass. Jessica was screaming now, just pure crazy rage, still filming. Go, I said to the driver. Please, Atlanta Airport, main terminal. The driver started driving. I watched my husband and daughter get smaller in the mirror. They stood on the grass in their bathrobes in the cold, screaming at a taxi. They looked insane. I turned my head and looked forward. I didn't cry. I felt empty and cold. 38 years of marriage, 40 years of being a mother, ending on a lawn with spit on a window. My phone buzzed in my purse. Pulled it out. A text from Robert. You will be sorry for the rest of your life. Text from Jessica. Hope you're happy. The twins are crying. They wanted waffles. I can't believe you did this to them. I looked at the messages. They wanted waffles. How ridiculous and mean. I put the phone on silent. I flew in a fancy seat for the first time ever. The seat was huge. They gave me a warm cloth and a glass of champagne before we even moved. When the plane left the ground, going high above Atlanta, I felt the heavy weight of my life disappear. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't a babysitter. It was just Helen. And I was flying to Alaska. For 3 days I did nothing. I sat on the private balcony of my room on the Coral Princess ship and watched the gray ocean roll by. I drank coffee someone else made. I ate fish I didn't have to cook and walked away from plates I didn't have to clean. Slept. I slept for 10 hours every night. A deep, heavy sleep I hadn't known since before Jessica was born. For the first time in my grown-up life, the only person I had to take care of was myself. Quiet was scary. On the 4th day, we went into a narrow passage. The water became smooth like a mirror, and the mountains went up on both sides, their tops covered in white snow. I had kept my phone off, hidden in my purse, a dead thing. But I needed to turn it on to check what we were doing today on the ship. The second I turned it on, it exploded. The screen froze, unable to handle all the angry messages trying to get in. 52 text messages, 21 missed calls, 14 voicemails. They were a digital attack, a mountain of need and anger. I scrolled through the text previews, my stomach hurting. Robert, Helen, this is not funny. The garbage disposal is broken. What did you do to it? Jessica, Princess has an upset tummy. She is stressed because you left her. This is your fault. Robert, I had to order pizza for the twins. Hope you're happy. Jessica, I cannot find the waffle maker. Where did you put it? The twins are crying. You are ruining their spring break. Robert, your sister was very rude to us. You need to call her and tell her to apologize right now. Jessica, I am losing followers because I haven't posted. I am stressed. I am supposed to be a mother and a chef. Can't do this. You need to come home now. My hand was shaking. I clicked on the newest voicemail from Jessica. Her voice no longer sounded polished, but whiny and sharp. Mom, answer your phone. The power went out in my bathroom. The switch thing or whatever. Can't use my hairdryer. Robert is useless. You need to call someone to fix it. You need to fix this. This is a nightmare. I felt the familiar cold fear creep into my bones. The sick feeling in my stomach. They didn't miss me. They missed their servant. The machine that cooked, cleaned, and fixed things was broken, and they were mad. Just then, the ship's engines got quieter. I looked up from the screen. We had arrived. We were at Glacier Bay. It wasn't just ice. It was a mountain made of ice. It was the biggest thing I had ever seen. A huge wall of ancient blue ice that glowed from the inside. The air coming off it was so cold it hurt my lungs. As I stared at it, a sound like thunder cracked across the water. A piece of ice the size of my house broke away from the glacier and fell into the ocean. It was violent, scary, and beautiful. It was the sound of something ending. My phone buzzed again, hot and angry in my cold hand. A new text from Robert. Robert, I am warning you, Helen. If you are not home by Friday, I am calling my lawyer. You are leaving this marriage. I looked at the text. Then I looked at the glacier. The glacier was 10,000 years old. Had carved through mountains. It did not care about Robert. It did not care about waffle makers or cat beds or bathroom switches. Just was. And for the first time, so was I. I felt that same ancient ice enter my body. I opened Robert's name on my phone. My thumb steady and sure pressed the button. Block this number. A small box asked me to confirm. Press block. He was gone. I opened Jessica's name. Her smiling selfie looked back at me. Pressed the button. Block. This number. Block. She was gone. I turned the phone off. I didn't just silence it. I held the power button until the screen went black. I stood on the balcony, the Arctic wind blowing my hair. The phone was a dead black rectangle in my hand. The glacier groaned again, a deep, powerful sound. I took a deep breath of the freezing air. It burned my lungs, but it was the first clean breath I had taken in 38 years. Robert and Jessica stood in the small hallway of my sister's apartment, dripping melted rain onto her doormat. She's not answering her phone, Robert said, skipping any hello. He was trying to use his manager voice, the one he used to scare people. We know she talked to you, Karen, Jessica said, already walking around, her expensive coat open. Where is she? My sister Karen later told me she just stood there for a moment, enjoying watching them panic. She was wearing her orange sweater, holding a cup of tea. Well, good afternoon to you too, Robert. Jessica. I see you've learned how to knock, Karen said, her voice cool and calm. We don't have time for this, Karen, Robert snapped. Helen has run away. Some kind of mental breakdown. Crazy episode. Crazy episode. Karen repeated, nodding slowly. Or she quit. Did you think of that? People usually quit when they work too hard and get no respect. Jessica laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. She's my mother. She doesn't get to quit. She has jobs to do. To whom? Karen asked, taking a sip of her tea. To you, a 40-year-old woman who moved back home with 2 children and a cat and expects her retired mother to work as a free babysitter? Or to you, Robert, a 65-year-old man who can't figure out how to order his own pizza? Their faces, Karen said, looked shocked and angry. You are out of line, Robert said, pointing a finger at her. Helen is my wife. This is a family problem. It was a family problem, Karen said, her voice getting harder. It became my problem when my sister showed up at my door on Easter night, crying because her husband and daughter treated her like a servant. Because you made her feel bad for a pair of socks after she cooked for 3 days. Because you told her to cancel her one vacation so she looked at Jessica, could go to Morocco and leave her to watch your cat who apparently sleeps in a $250 bed. Jessica, for the first time, looked speechless. Robert's face turned dark red. She's been tricked. Robert tried changing his approach. This isn't like her. You did this. You put these ideas in her head. Oh, I didn't have to put anything in her head, Robert. You and your daughter did all the work. I just gave her permission to save her own life. She was drowning. You were holding her head underwater and complaining that she wasn't cleaning the floor at the same time. Karen walked to her front door and opened it wide, letting the cold air from the hallway come in. Helen is fine, she said, her voice strong and clear. She is on a 15-day cruise to Alaska. She has blocked your phone numbers as I told her to. She is taking a long overdue vacation from both of you. Alaska. Jessica shrieked, her voice echoing in the small apartment. That's thousands of dollars. That's our money. That's family money. It's her money, Karen said, her voice like iron. Her retirement account. The one she earned working 32 years at the post office. While she looked at Robert, were enjoying her hot dinners, and she looked at Jessica, were doing whatever it is you do on that phone. She stood at the door, a tiny 85-year-old woman in a sweater holding them both back. Now get out of my apartment, Karen ordered. Don't come back. Don't call here. Helen will contact you if and when she is ready, and I suspect after this show, it won't be any time soon. Robert and Jessica just stared, completely defeated by a force they had never considered, an old woman who was not afraid of them. They stumbled out into the hallway, silent. Karen shut the door, locked it, and she told me went back to finish her tea. I was in the ship's fancy dining room, the Crown Grill. I was wearing a simple black dress I had bought in the ship's store. I had just ordered the steak. I was alone, and I was, for the first time in my memory, truly happy. I had turned my phone back on just to take pictures. I wasn't planning to call anyone. But as the waiter poured me a glass of red wine, the screen lit up. An unknown number from Atlanta. I should have ignored it, but some old stupid mother instinct made me answer it. Hello. It was Jessica, but her voice was wrong. It was small, weak, and crying. Oh God. Mom, I'm so sorry. I held the wine glass tight. My heart did a stupid, painful jump. I've been so terrible to you, she sobbed. I don't know what's wrong with me. We're so worried. Daddy and we just miss you so much. I've been a horrible daughter. It was every word I had ever wanted to hear. And it felt completely fake. What do you want, Jessica? I said, my voice quiet. I just wanted to hear your voice. And I'm in trouble, Mom. I'm in real trouble. The Morocco trip, the brand deal, fell apart. They're saying I broke the contract because I haven't posted, and my credit card, Mom, they said no. I can't even buy food for the twins. I'm so scared. She let out another heartbreaking sob. I'm a terrible mother. I can't even feed my children. Where is Robert? He's trying, but his money is all locked up. Please, I just need a loan just to get us through the month. Just $4,000. I'll pay you back. Promise I will. You're the only one I can ask. I looked at the steak knife on the table. I thought of the $250 cat bed. I thought of the ice in Glacier Bay. No, Jessica. The sobbing stopped immediately. There was a dead, cold silence on the line. What? She whispered. Said no. I will not be giving you $4,000. But the twins, they need food. Mom, are you going to let your grandchildren starve? You have a roof over your head, and Robert has a credit card. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Fine, she hissed, her voice changing, getting hard and mean. Fine, you old miser. I don't need your permission. I'll just use the joint savings account, the one you and Dad set up for me. I wouldn't bother, I said, taking a sip of my wine. It was delicious. I logged in from the airport in Seattle. I changed all the passwords. That account is frozen. You can't touch it. The silence that followed was like a black hole, and then the explosion. It was a sound I had never heard, a sound of pure, raw animal rage. "Which," she screamed, the words so loud the couple at the next table looked over. I calmly held the phone away from my ear, and I pressed record. "You selfish old hag. You were always a boring, pathetic post office worker. And you're jealous. You're jealous of me. You're jealous I have a career. You're jealous I'm beautiful. You always have been." I held the phone steady. I was a researcher documenting a rare and vicious creature. Daddy was right. You're dead weight. You're a burden on everyone. You think this is funny. Running off on a boat. I hope you fall off that stupid ship and drown. You hear me? I hope you die in the ocean, you miserable, selfish witch. Are you finished? I asked when she paused to breathe. You'll come back to nothing, she shrieked, ignoring me. Daddy and I are going to get everything. We'll tell the judge you're insane. You'll lose it all. You'll end up on the street, and I'll laugh. I'll laugh while you suffer. Hung up. I saved the recording. Jessica audio file. My steak arrived. It was cooked perfectly, just the way I liked it. Ate every bite. That night, I paid for the ship's fancy internet package. I opened my laptop. I did what I do best. I researched. I found a name. Margaret Cole, the toughest female divorce lawyer in Atlanta. Her website said he thinks you're weak. Let's show him he's wrong. I wrote an email. Subject, need help. 38-year marriage. Money problems. Dear Ms. Cole, my name is Helen. I am 63 years old, and I am currently on a cruise in Alaska. I am writing to you today because I have decided to divorce my husband, Robert. I believe he has been mean and controlling with money for years. My 40-year-old daughter is helping him. I've attached a recent audio recording as an example of what I am dealing with. I will be back in Atlanta in 10 days. I would like to meet with you as soon as I get back. Sincerely, Helen. I attached the audio file and I pressed send. Margaret Cole's office was on the 28th floor of a tall glass building in downtown Atlanta. It was the kind of building that looked expensive. Margaret was in her 50s, wearing a sharp gray suit, and she had an energy I hadn't seen in years. Pure confidence. She wasn't sentimental. She was like a surgeon. I've read your email, Helen, she said, her voice clear and sharp. And I've listened to the audio file. Your daughter is something else. I sat across from her, my back straight. I was wearing my best navy suit, the one I used to wear for important post office meetings. She's been enabled, clearly by your husband Robert, Margaret said, opening a folder. He was served the divorce papers this morning. He is not happy. His lawyer, a man I know well and don't like, has already filed back. A counter file for what? He's asking for divorce based on you abandoning him, and he is asking for 65% of all shared property, including a full half of your personal retirement account. I felt the blood drain from my face. I can't. That's my money. I earned. He's saying that your 32 years of work was just extra income for the family, Margaret explained, her face serious. He's saying his income as a manager was the main source, and that your retirement is shared property to be split. Also, he's saying that since you left him, he deserves to be paid back for the hurt. He left me, I said, my voice shaking. He and Jessica, they pushed me out. You know. He knows. But the law, Helen, is about what we can prove. He will paint you as an unstable, crazy woman who ran away for no reason. She, Margaret tapped the folder, will be his main witness. A loving, worried daughter concerned about her mother's mental health. I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. For a moment, I felt the old familiar ice-cold fear. They were going to take everything. They were going to say I was crazy and leave me with nothing. He's a liar, I whispered. Most of them are, Margaret said without blinking. Which is why we have to be. Martyr. He thinks you're a boring post office worker. He thinks you spent 32 years just sorting mail. He's making a big mistake. I need you to be a post office supervisor, Helen, the best supervisor the state has ever seen. What do you mean? I want you to go back to the house you lived in for 38 years. And I want you to find every piece of paper about money. I want every bank paper, every credit card bill, every tax form, every house paper, every car payment for 38 years. He thinks he's hidden his money. He thinks he's covered his tracks. He's forgotten who he was married to. She leaned across the desk. You didn't just sort mail, did you, Helen? A small, cold smile touched my lips. I was the supervisor. Managed the budget, trained new workers, and ran the lost package investigation department. I know how to find things people don't want found. Good, Margaret said, a matching smile appearing on her face. Go to work. Find me the paper trail. He's left one. They always do. I went back to the house. It was empty. Robert and Jessica had apparently gone to stay at a hotel, not wanting to be in the house when I returned. Place was a mess. Piles of dishes everywhere, dirty laundry on the floor, pizza boxes stacked on my dining room table. The $250 cat bed was on the kitchen counter, torn and broken. They had left in a rush. I didn't clean anything. I walked past the mess and went straight to Robert's home office. He had locked the filing cabinets. It was a cheap, weak lock. I went to the garage, got a hammer, and broke the drawer open in less than a minute. Inside, files, years and years of them. I spent the next 2 weeks in that office. I didn't sleep much. I lived on coffee and crackers. I compared credit card bills with bank withdrawals. I looked at his paycheck stubs from work with what he told the government we earned on our tax forms. He'd stupidly left everything in a desk drawer. I built a spreadsheet, a huge color-coded chart of our entire money life. On the 14th day, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I found it. It wasn't a big obvious problem. It was a pattern. Small regular payments every 3 months for 12 years, labeled business expense. They went to a company I'd never heard of, RT Solutions. But the payments stopped going to RT Solutions 4 years ago, and they started going somewhere else. A wire transfer once every 3 months, to a bank I didn't recognize. I searched the bank number online. It wasn't a U.S. bank. It was Caribbean Trust Bank, Cayman Islands. Kept digging. I went into the attic, into the boxes of old files he thought were long forgotten. And I found the papers for RT Solutions. The address listed wasn't an office. It was a P.O. box. Kept digging. I found an old travel paper from a work conference 5 years ago. It wasn't to Dallas. It was to Grand Cayman. And then, in the very back of his desk drawer, taped under the bottom, I found a single key. Not a house key. A small gold key, the kind used for a safe deposit box. Attached to it was a small paper tag. On it, written in Robert's neat handwriting, were 2 things. A number and a name. Martinez. I didn't know who R. Martinez was. But I knew one thing. I had him. Margaret Cole wasn't just a lawyer. She was a hunter. She looked at the key and the name Martinez, and she smiled. Rosa Martinez, Margaret said, already typing on her computer. His secretary for the last 10 years. The one who retired 2 months before he did. It's almost embarrassing how predictable he is. RT Solutions, I whispered, the pieces clicking together. Robert and Rosa. Exactly. A basic shell company. He's been taking illegal payments from his suppliers for years. Business expenses. He'd approve a high invoice, the supplier would pay the kickback to the shell company, and he'd keep the difference. Simple, pure theft. But the bank in the Cayman Islands. That's the second part, Margaret said, her eyes shining. He got scared. Maybe Rosa got scared. 4 years ago, they started moving the money to another country. A joint account in a place with secret banking laws. He thought he was so smart. He thought he was smarter than everyone, especially smarter than his boring post office wife. She picked up her phone. We're filing an emergency court motion. We're saying there's immediate risk of him moving assets and committing tax crimes. We're not just going after the divorce money, Helen. We're going to freeze that Cayman Islands account, and we're going to get a court order to open that safe deposit box. He won't even know it's happening until it's done. 2 days later, I was standing in the cold, quiet vault of a private security deposit company. It was me, Margaret, a court-appointed money expert, and a bank manager. Robert had been ordered by the court to be there. He walked in with his own lawyer. When he saw me, his face, which had been angry and mean, turned a sickly pale gray. He looked at the expert, at the key in the manager's hand, and he knew. "You had no right," he hissed at me, his voice shaking. "I had every right," I said, meeting his eyes. The manager turned the key. He pulled out a long, thin metal box. He placed it on the table. The expert, wearing white gloves, opened it. Inside were not gold coins or jewelry. It was just paper. But that paper was everything. The expert, in a flat voice, began to list what was inside. 1. Original papers for RT Solutions Company. 2. A key card for an apartment. Address: Sunset Bay Condos, Grand Cayman, Cayman Islands. 3. A deed owned jointly by Robert Thompson and Rosa Martinez. 4. A printed account ledger for Caribbean Trust Bank. Current balance. Expert paused, adjusting his glasses. $1,285,000. Robert's lawyer made a small choking sound. And 5, the expert said, pulling out the last paper. A formal signed last will dated 4 months ago, replacing all previous wills. In this document, Mr. Thompson leaves 80% of his personal assets and the contents of the Cayman Islands account to Ms. Rosa Martinez, citing love and partnership. My 38-year marriage, my 32 years of work, my children, all erased. He was going to fake being abandoned, give me almost nothing, and run away to the Cayman Islands with his mistress and our money. Robert was leaning against the wall. He wasn't arrogant anymore. He was just an old gray man in an expensive suit that didn't fit right. He looked at me, his eyes wide with desperate, pathetic begging. He was begging me to be the old Helen, the one who fixed things, the one who would forgive everything. I thought of the cold night I drove away. I thought of the $250 cat bed. I thought of the words, "I hope you drown." I looked at Margaret. "I believe we have everything we need," I said. "You can send copies of this to the tax authorities and the district attorney." Robert slid down the wall and sat heavily on the floor. The courtroom was silent. The air smelled like old wood and cleaning products. I sat beside Margaret, my hands folded on the table. Robert sat across from us. He had lost weight. His expensive suit hung loose on him, and his skin was the color of wet concrete. He wouldn't look at me. Jessica was not there. His lawyer had told him not to bring her. Robert's lawyer talked loudly for an hour. He used the words abandonment and mental breakdown. He tried to paint me as a hysterical woman who had been badly influenced by a meddling sister. He said the Cayman Islands account was a private, non-marriage business thing that had nothing to do with the divorce. He finished by asking the court to enforce the 50-50 split of all property, including my retirement account, as was normal in the state of Georgia. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, looked at Margaret. "Miss Cole, your response." Margaret stood up. She carried a stack of thick binders. "Your Honor," Margaret began, her voice calm and clear. "We'd first like to address the claim that my client, Mrs. Thompson, did not contribute equally to this marriage." She placed the first binder on the judge's desk. "For 38 years, my client did the work of a full-time unpaid house manager, cook, bookkeeper, driver, and childcare provider. She did this while keeping a 32-year career at the post office. We have listed this household work, year by year, using the standard market rates for such services." She turned a page on a board for the court to see. It was a huge spreadsheet. By careful estimates, Helen's unpaid work for this household, which directly helped Mr. Thompson's career, has a money value of $1.9 million. Robert's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. That's ridiculous. You can't put a price tag on a marriage." The judge looked at him over her glasses. "She can, and she has." "Sit down, counsel." Margaret continued. "Mr. Thompson has claimed his wife's retirement account is shared property. We argue that her account, earned completely by her own work, is the only payment she has ever received for her 38 years of labor. His claim is, to put it simply, outrageous. She then picked up the second binder. This one was thinner and bound in red. Now let's talk about Mr. Thompson's private business thing. This was not a spreadsheet. This was the evidence from the safe deposit box. Margaret didn't need to add drama. She just stated the facts. We have here the papers for RT Solutions, a fake company. We have bank statements from Caribbean Trust Bank proving a hidden joint account containing $1.285 million from criminal kickbacks. We have the deed to an apartment in Grand Cayman, also jointly owned. And finally, Margaret said, her voice dropping lower, we have Mr. Thompson's active last will, which leaves 80% of these stolen assets to his mistress, Ms. Rosa Martinez, trying to cheat his wife of her share, not just in life but also in his death. A wave of whispers went through the courtroom. Robert had sunk so low in his chair he was barely visible. The judge stared at Robert for a long, silent minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was sharp with anger. Mr. Thompson, the judge said, in my 18 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a planned, mean, and arrogant case of money theft done by one spouse to another. You did not just cheat on your wife. You systematically stole from her. You treated her as your unpaid worker while building a secret life behind her back. She looked at me. Mrs. Thompson, your hard work in preparing these documents is impressive and shows your skill. She looked back at Robert. This court finds you guilty of serious money crimes and wasting of marriage assets. Therefore I rule as follows. My heart was pounding in my chest. 1. Mrs. Thompson's retirement account is her own private property. It will not be touched. 2. The entire contents of the Caribbean Trust Bank account and the Grand Cayman apartment are given completely to Mrs. Thompson as punishment payment. 3. The family house is to be sold right away. 4. Of all remaining legally shared assets, Mrs. Thompson is given 75%. You will receive 25%. 5. You will pay for all of Mrs. Thompson's lawyer fees. The gavel hit the desk. Sounded like a gunshot. We are finished. And Mr. Thompson, the judge added, I would tell you to get a criminal lawyer. The tax authorities and the county prosecutor will be getting copies of these findings this afternoon. I stood up. My legs were shaking. I did not look at Robert. I did not need to. He was no longer my problem. I had my proof, and the scales were finally balanced. I walked out of the courtroom with my head up and didn't look back. My new apartment was small. Just 2 bedrooms in a quiet building in Marietta, 25 minutes away from the life I used to have. It was mine. The lease was in my name. The furniture, a soft couch, a real wood bookshelf, a bed that I didn't have to share, was all new. I unpacked my books first. They were my oldest friends. As I put them on the shelves, I felt order coming back to my life for the first time. The house sold fast in the court-ordered sale. The lawyers handled everything. I never had to see Robert again. The money from the Cayman Islands account, after lawyer fees and international bank fees, was now sitting in my own private bank account. It was enough. I would never be rich, but I would be safe. I would be free. 2 weeks after I moved in, I drove to the local public library. It was a nice brick building, smaller than my old post office, but it smelled the same, like paper and dust and quiet possibility. I found the head librarian, a young woman named Amy. I'm Helen Thompson, I said, holding out my hand. I was the post office supervisor for the Atlanta region for 32 years. I'm newly retired, and I was wondering if you needed any volunteers. Amy's eyes went wide. The Helen Thompson, the one who managed the lost package department. Yes, definitely. Yes, we would love that. That afternoon, I sat in a quiet corner organizing donated books. The careful, slow work felt good for my soul. The smell of old paper, the quiet sounds of people reading. This was my world. This was where I belonged. I was sorting a new box of history books when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't know. I let it go to voicemail. A text message appeared a moment later. Mom, it's me. I'm using a friend's phone. Please, I just want to talk. I heard what happened in court. He's in a lot of trouble. I stared at the message. Felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just a deep, quiet emptiness. The rage had burned itself out. Typed a reply. My hands were steady. Jessica, I have received your message. I'm not ready to talk to you. I am rebuilding my life and I need time and space. Please do not contact me again until I contact you. I sent it and then I blocked that number too. Few minutes later, Amy brought me a cup of coffee. Long day? She asked, smiling. You have no idea, I said. We sat and talked about her plans for a new reading program for adults. I gave a few ideas from my old post office training programs. She listened, writing notes. I felt a familiar, long-lost feeling. It was respect. That evening, I went home to my quiet, clean apartment. I ate a simple dinner of soup and toast. I opened my laptop. I didn't check my bank account. I didn't read the news. I opened the internet. Type 12-day tours of Ireland. I found a tour. The castles and coasts of Ireland, leaving in June. I looked at the schedule. Dublin, Galway, small coastal towns. Click book now. I paid for it completely. I was not a wife. I was not a babysitter. I was Helen. And I was going to Ireland. It was June. The thick humidity of a Georgia summer hadn't started yet. It was just warm, sunny, and green. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and honeysuckle. My flight to Dublin was in 3 days. I drove to Riverside Apartments, but I didn't go to apartment 3C. I walked around the back to the community garden area. She was there. Karen, my 85-year-old sister, was on her knees, wearing a wide sun hat, pulling weeds from the dirt. I walked up the stone path and knelt in the dirt beside her. For a few minutes we just worked, pulling up the bad plants together in quiet. Your hands look better, she said, not looking up. I looked at my palms. They weren't red and hurt from scrubbing pots. They were just dirty with clean brown earth. I've been volunteering at the Marietta Library, I said. Organizing old books. Good, she said, yanking a long route out. Useful work. My apartment is all organized, I told her. The new bookshelves are full. But I'm leaving for Ireland on Thursday. At this she finally stopped. She sat back and looked at me, her eyes still sharp and clear, studying me. She looked at my simple cotton pants, my new short haircut, the piece on my face. Good, she said again, but this time her voice was different. Softer. Thank you, Karen, I whispered. For helping me wake up. Karen made a sound like a laugh. She pointed to the freshly weeded, empty dirt in front of us. You woke yourself up, Helen. I just told you what time it was. She reached over to a small plastic tray and picked up a tiny plant. It was a tomato plant, barely 6 inches tall with sharp little leaves and one tiny promising green bud. My back is hurting, she said, holding it out to me. Plant this one for me. I took the seedling. I dug my fingers deep into the rich, damp soil, making a small, perfect hole. The earth felt cool and alive, so different from the cold, hard ice of Alaska. This wasn't an ending. This was a beginning. I gently placed the young tomato plant into the hole. It's hard work starting over, Karen said quietly, watching me pack the earth around the fragile stem. A lot of digging. A lot of pulling weeds. You'll be tired. She placed her gloved hand on my shoulder. But it's good work. You spent 38 years taking care of everyone else's mess, Helen. It's time you learned to grow your own garden, she said. Her voice strong and full of a love more powerful than any easy hug. Has to be planted by you. I pressed the last of the soil around the tomato plant. I stood up and brushed the dirt from my hands. I looked at the little plant standing straight and proud in the center of the fresh dark earth. The sun was warm on my face. I wasn't cold. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't anyone's servant. I was Helen. And I was just planting my garden. 3 months later, I was sitting on a stone wall overlooking the cliffs of Moher in Ireland. The wind was wild and cold, whipping my hair across my face. The ocean below was a dark, churning green, crashing against rocks that had stood for 1,000,000 years. I was wearing a bright red raincoat I'd bought in Dublin, and I was eating a cheese sandwich I'd made myself that morning. A tour group walked past, led by a cheerful guide talking about ancient Celtic history. I smiled and nodded but didn't join them. I was content alone. My phone, which I now kept on only for taking pictures, buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. It was an email from Amy at the library. Subject: exciting opportunity. Helen, I hope Ireland is amazing. Quick question. We're looking for someone to lead a new volunteer program training retired professionals to help with community outreach. The board unanimously suggested you. It's 15 hours a week, small stipend, and you'd be helping shape something really meaningful. Interested? Let me know when you're back. Enjoy those cliffs. Me. I looked out at the endless ocean, the ancient cliffs, the sky that seemed to go on forever. A year ago, I would have immediately said yes, eager to please, desperate to be useful. Now, I took a deep breath of the salty air and simply smiled. I would think about it. I would decide when I got home. But right now, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. Not rushing. Not serving. Not proving my worth. Just being. I took a photo of the cliffs, the wild ocean, the endless sky. I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't send it to anyone. It was just for me. A record of this moment when Helen finally learned to just stand still and breathe. The flight home was smooth and quiet. I sat by the window and watched the clouds, thick and white like mountains of cotton. I didn't sleep. I didn't read. I just thought. About Karen's garden. About the tiny tomato plant that would be growing now in the summer heat. About Margaret's fierce protection. About the judge's words. Your diligence is a credit to your profession. About Amy's email and the choice that waited for me at home. When we landed in Atlanta, I didn't feel the usual dread of returning. Felt curious, wondering what came next. I drove to my apartment as the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The space smelled like the lavender candle I'd left burning before I left. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. My books on the shelf. My clean kitchen. My comfortable couch. My own space. I made a cup of tea and sat on my small balcony. I could hear children playing in the courtyard below, their laughter floating up like music. I thought about Jessica, about the twins, about how I had not heard from them in 3 months. The silence used to terrify me. Now it felt like peace. I knew someday there might be a reckoning, conversation, maybe even a reconciliation. But it would be on my terms. When I was ready, if I was ever ready, pulled out my phone and opened Amy's email. I read it again carefully. 15 hours a week. Small stipend. Helping shape something meaningful. Typed a reply. Amy, thank you for thinking of me. Ireland was beautiful beyond words. I'm very interested in the volunteer program. Let's meet next week to discuss. I'd love to hear your vision and see if I can contribute. Looking forward to it. Helen. I hit send. Felt good. Not desperate. Not obligated. Just interested. Just willing. I finished my tea as the sun disappeared completely, leaving the sky dark and full of stars. Somewhere across town, Robert was probably meeting with lawyers, dealing with tax investigators, watching his comfortable life crumble. Somewhere, Jessica was probably struggling, learning what it meant to be responsible, to be an adult without a safety net. I felt a small flicker of something. Not quite pity. Not quite satisfaction. Just acknowledgement. They were living their consequences. I was living my freedom. The next morning, I drove to Riverside Apartments. Karen was in her garden again, this time watering the plants with a green hose. The tomato plant I'd planted had grown. It was now 2 feet tall with several small green tomatoes hanging from its branches. Look at that, Karen said, pointing with pride. You planted that 3 months ago. Now it's feeding itself, growing on its own. I knelt down and touched one of the small tomatoes gently. It was firm and real. Soon it'll be ripe, Karen said. Ready to pick. Ready to eat. She turned off the hose and sat on a small bench, patting the space next to her. Sep. You look different, she observed. Lighter. I feel different, I admitted. Like I've been holding my breath for 38 years and finally exhaled. That's because you have, Karen said simply. You've been suffocating yourself trying to make everyone else comfortable. Now you're finally breathing your own air. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the garden grow in the morning sun. A butterfly landed on a nearby flower, its wings bright orange and black. So beautiful, I whispered. Karen nodded. You know what the best part about butterflies is? They can't go backward. Once they've transformed, they can only fly forward. I looked at my sister, this wise, strong woman who had given me permission to save my own life. Thank you, Karen, for everything. She patted my hand. Thank you for finally listening. We stayed in the garden for another hour, just being, just breathing, just existing in our own space without apology. When I finally left, Karen handed me a small basket. 3 ripe tomatoes from another plant, warm from the sun. For your dinner, she said. From one free woman to another. I took them carefully like the precious gifts they were. I'll see you next week, I said. For our regular tea. For our regular tea, Karen confirmed. And Helen. Yes. Keep flying forward. I drove home with the windows down, the warm summer air filling the car. I thought about Margaret, about Amy, about the judge, about Karen. All these women who had helped me find my way back to myself. That evening, I made a simple salad with Karen's tomatoes. They were sweet and perfect. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. After dinner, I opened my laptop. I typed a new search. Volunteer opportunities for retired postal workers. A list appeared. Literacy programs. Community organizing. Disaster relief coordination. So many ways to use my skills, my experience, my knowledge. Not because I had to. Not because someone demanded it. But because I chose to. I bookmarked several links to explore later. Then I opened a different tab. I typed cooking classes for beginners in Atlanta. I had spent 38 years cooking for other people. Now I wanted to learn to cook for myself. Try new recipes. To experiment. To enjoy it. I found a Saturday morning class. International Cuisine Basics. I registered and paid. My first class was in 2 weeks. Then, almost without thinking, I opened one more tab. I typed painting classes for seniors. I had always wanted to paint. Always admired art. But there had never been time. Never been permission. Now there was both. I found an evening watercolor class at a local community center. Beginner friendly. No experience necessary. I registered for that too. I closed my laptop and looked around my small, quiet apartment. My space. My rules. My life. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't serving. I was building. Creating. Growing. I was, for the first time in my adult life, becoming whoever Helen was supposed to be. The weeks turned into months. Summer faded into fall. The leaves turned gold and red. I fell into a routine that was entirely my own. Monday and Wednesday mornings. Volunteering at the library. Helping Amy build the new community program. Tuesday evenings. Watercolor class, where I discovered I was terrible at painting but loved it anyway. Thursday afternoons. Tea with Karen in her garden, talking about books and life and nothing at all. Saturday mornings. Cooking class where I learned to make Thai curry and French bread and Spanish paella. Sundays. Mine, completely mine, to read or walk or do absolutely nothing. I made friends. Real friends. Not friends through obligation or family connection, but people I chose. There was Margaret, who occasionally texted me funny legal memes and invited me to her book club. There was Amy, who became not just a colleague but a genuine friend, someone I could laugh with over coffee. There was Patricia from my painting class, a widow in her 70s who had the most wicked sense of humor I'd ever encountered. There was David from cooking class, a retired teacher who was learning to cook after his wife passed away. We formed a small cooking group, meeting once a month to try new recipes and share stories. My life became full but not suffocating. Busy but not overwhelming. Rich but not exhausting. And through it all, the silence from Jessica and Robert continued. Sometimes I wondered about the twins. If they were okay. If they missed me. But I reminded myself, they had 2 parents. They had a father who was finally learning to be present. They would be fine. In October, on a crisp fall afternoon, I was at the library helping organize a book donation when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Small voice. Young. Nervous. Grandma Helen. My heart stopped. It was one of the twins. I couldn't tell which one. Their voices had always sounded the same. Yes, I said carefully. This is Grandma. It's me. Jacob. Your grandson. Oh, Jacob. Hey. Sweetheart. There was a long pause. I could hear breathing. Then, I miss you. 3 words. Simple. Devastating. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I miss you too, Jacob. Another pause. Mom said you're mad at us. That's why you left. I sat down on a nearby chair, gripping the phone. I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. I'm not mad at you or your brother. Sometimes grown-ups need to make hard choices to take care of themselves. That doesn't mean I stopped loving you. Are you ever coming back? His voice was so small, so hopeful. I don't know, buddy. I said honestly. Right now, I'm living in my own place and doing my own things. But that doesn't mean I don't think about you. Can I call you sometimes? Just to talk. I felt tears prick my eyes. Course you can. Anytime you want. Okay, he said. Have to go. Mom doesn't know I took her phone. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, Jacob. The line went dead. I sat there for a long moment, holding the phone, feeling the weight of those words. He had reached out. Not Jessica. Not Robert. But Jacob. A child trying to make sense of the broken pieces. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what came next. But I knew one thing. I would not sacrifice myself again. If there was a relationship to rebuild with my grandchildren, it would be on healthy terms. With boundaries. With respect. I wiped my eyes and went back to work, organizing books, helping people find what they were looking for. That evening I told Karen about the call. She listened, nodding slowly. How do you feel? She asked. Hopeful. Scared. Confused. All of it. Good, Karen said. That means you're feeling. That means you're alive. If he calls again, what will you do? I'll answer, I said. But I won't go running back. I won't sacrifice my peace. I'll be his grandmother, but on my terms. Karen smiled. That's my girl. We sat together as the sun set, drinking tea, watching the last tomatoes of the season ripen on the vine. The garden had produced all summer. Now it was preparing for winter. Just like me. Growing, resting, preparing for whatever came next. November arrived with cold wind and gray skies. Thanksgiving approached. Last year I had cooked for days. This year I was invited to Patricia's house for a small, casual dinner with our painting class friends. No pressure. No expectations. Just good food and good company. Said yes. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up in my apartment feeling light and free. I made coffee and sat on my balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching the world wake up. No turkey to prepare. No dishes to wash. No family drama to navigate. Just peace. I went to Patricia's at 2 p.m. carrying a simple apple pie I'd made in cooking class. Her small house was warm and filled with laughter. There were 8 of us total. People who had found each other not through blood or obligation, but through choice and connection. We ate and talked and laughed for hours. Nobody demanded anything. Nobody took anything for granted. We were all just grateful to be there, together by choice. As I drove home that night, full of good food and good feelings, I realized something profound. This was my family now. Not by blood but by choice. People who saw me, respected me, valued me. I didn't need Robert's approval or Jessica's love to be whole. I was already whole. December came, and with it the anniversary. 1 year since that awful Christmas dinner. 1 year since I walked out. 1 year since I chose myself. I marked the day quietly, privately. I made Karen's favorite soup and took it to her apartment. We ate together and talked about everything and nothing. You did it, Karen said, raising her teacup like a toast. You made it a whole year. I did, I said, clinking my cup against hers. And I'm not going back. You better not, Karen said with a smile. I didn't raise you to be a coward. You didn't raise me at all, I laughed. I'm your sister, not your daughter. Well, somebody had to show you how to grow a spine, Karen said, grinning. I laughed until my sides hurt. That night I went home and opened my laptop. I looked at my bank account. The money from the Cayman Islands account, carefully invested, had grown. I was secure. I was stable. I was free. I opened a new tab and typed, "River cruises in Europe." A list of beautiful journeys appeared. The Danube. The Rhine. The Seine. I bookmarked several to look at later. I wasn't in a rush. I had time. I had the rest of my life. As I closed my laptop, I looked around my apartment. My books. At my paintings, terrible and wonderful, hanging on the walls. At the photos from Ireland. At the small potted tomato plant Karen had given me, still producing tiny tomatoes on my windowsill. This was my life now. Quiet. No grand revenge. No dramatic reconciliation. Just peace. Just freedom. Just Helen finally learning to live for herself. I turned off the lights and went to bed, not as someone's wife or someone's mother or someone's servant, but as myself. Just myself. And that was enough. That was everything. The next morning, I woke up to sun streaming through my window. I made coffee and sat on my balcony, wrapped in my favorite blanket. Below, children played in the courtyard. Somewhere people were rushing to work. Somewhere people were stressed and overwhelmed. But here in this moment I was just breathing. Just being. Just living my own life on my own terms in my own time. I picked a tiny tomato from the plant on my windowsill. It was perfectly ripe, warm from the morning sun. Ate it, slowly savoring the sweetness. Tasted like victory. Tasted like freedom. My phone buzzed. Text from Amy. Coffee this afternoon. Want to show you the final plans for the community program. I smiled and typed back. 3 p.m. Perfect. See you then. Another buzz. Patricia from painting class. Helen found the most ridiculous painting tutorial online. You'll love it. Want to try it together next week? I laughed and replied. Absolutely. Your place or mine. I'll make those cookies you taught me. I set the phone down and looked out at the world. A year ago, my phone buzzed with demands and anger and manipulation. Now it buzzed with friendship and plans and genuine connection. The difference was staggering. I got dressed slowly, choosing clothes I actually liked, not what was practical for cooking or cleaning. A soft blue sweater Karen had given me for my birthday. Comfortable jeans. My new boots. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back was different from a year ago. Her hair was shorter, styled the way she wanted it. Her face had fewer worry lines. Her eyes were clear and calm. She looked like someone who knew her worth. I drove to the library for my volunteer shift. The fall air was cold and crisp, smelling like wood smoke and possibility. Inside, Amy greeted me with a hug. Helen, perfect timing. Come see what we've built. She led me to a small room that had been transformed into a community center. Tables and chairs. Shelves of resources. A bulletin board covered in colorful flyers. This is all because of you, Amy said. Your organizational skills, your vision, your dedication. We're launching next month. I felt a swell of pride. Not the desperate need for approval I used to feel, but genuine satisfaction in work well done. It looks wonderful, I said. We did this together. After my shift, I met Patricia for coffee. We talked about everything. Her grandchildren, my painting progress, the ridiculous dating app her daughter wanted her to try. We laughed until our sides hurt. As I drove home in the fading afternoon light, I realized something profound. I was happy. Not the pretend happy I used to perform for Robert and Jessica. Not the exhausted happy of getting through another day. But real, genuine, bone-deep happy. My life was smaller than it used to be. Quieter. Simpler. But it was mine. Every single piece of it. I pulled into my parking spot and sat in the car for a moment, just breathing. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere Robert was living with his choices. Somewhere Jessica was learning hard lessons. And somewhere 2 little boys were growing up, hopefully learning that love doesn't mean sacrifice, that family doesn't mean servitude, that boundaries are healthy and necessary. Maybe someday we would find our way back to each other. Maybe not. Either way, I would be okay. Because I had found my way back to myself. And that was the only reunion that truly mattered. I got out of the car and walked to my apartment, my head high, my heart light. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. My home, my space, my life. I made dinner. Just for me. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. I read a book Karen had recommended. I painted a small watercolor of the sunset I'd just seen. It was terrible and I loved it. And when I finally turned off the lights and climbed into my own bed, in my own apartment, living my own life, I smiled. Because Helen had finally learned the most important lesson of all. She had learned to choose herself. And she was never ever going back. This is Granny's voice reminding you. It's never too late to plant your own garden. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to start living your own life. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Now go and tend to your own garden. You deserve it.